All right, today in this video, we're going to be looking at this Husqvarna LTH 1342. So this is a 13 horsepower engine with a 42-inch deck. And it runs good, it works. I'm getting it ready to sell to a customer to have them come look at it, you know, and then sell it to them. And when I got it, previous owner said that it would kill his battery. He would have to disconnect his battery when he parked it because his battery would go dead. And he said it wasn't charging. So I put a good battery in it. And I tried to check the diode. Was getting some really strange readings on that. Very inconsistent. So I went and checked the diode on a junk engine I have here. And I was getting the correct readings. When I started it up, it was charging okay. After trying to measure the diode, when I started it, it was measuring out of range on my meter. I had it set to 20 volts DC. It was out of range. So I put it up to the 200 volts DC. It was still measuring out of range. So naturally, you know, there's probably something wrong with my meter. But then I came down and I moved the wire around a little bit, tried it again, and it was charging like 12.8. So it was actually charging correct. But if I move the wire, then the numbers get crazy. So we're going to start it up and we're going to watch the meter while I move the wire around. And you know, see if I can duplicate that on camera. And then we're probably going to take the cover off the engine and look at the charging coil, because I think something's going screwy in there. And would you look at that? It's a flathead. This is one of the last good engines Briggs & Stratton made. 13 horsepower, flathead. The date on the engine is 2000. The date on the tractor is 2001. So it's not new by any means, but it is the step-through design, you know, and it's a hydro, but it's not a top-of-the-line model. It's got the regular axle on the front, but it's a nice little piece. So I got my leads on the battery. See if we can set this up so we can see it. So there, now we can see the meter pretty good. And these wires right here are for the charging coil. One side has a diode in it, and the other side's coming right from the windings. 99% of the mowers you're going to see, if they don't have an electric PTO, it's going to be this simple charging system right here. 99% of the ones with an electric PTO are going to have some kind of regulator. So this is really unregulated. So I'm going to start this up and we're going to watch these numbers as I jiggle the wires and see what happens. So there you can see, you move the wire a little bit and it goes out of range for the 20 volt measurement. Now I don't know how many volts it's putting out. I never put it up to the 1K, but for some reason it makes it read out of range. So we're going to take that cover off the engine and follow those wires and see what's going on in there. So we're going to start taking this cover off here. So these little guys are usually 1/4 inch. And one over here for the dipstick. Now I'm suspecting there's some kind of a nest in there because there was a lot of grass coming out when I started it the first time. And the rest of these should all be 3/8. 4 on the engine and 2 for this cover right here. And this also holds the gas tank in. So just a little interesting tidbit to throw in on these. On these older Craftsmans, if you have a stain right here that it's dark brown it's from the gas, because the tank mounts on this, and this moves as you pull on the steering wheel, you know, the dash. This will flex and crack the tank. So if you're ever looking at an old one like this with this style tank, if you see staining over here, there's going to be a crack right there, or possibly in the back. So that's just something to watch out for when you're looking at older ones with this style tank, because they did crack easy. This one looks so clean, like it probably was replaced already, because this is a 25-year-old tractor here. So now we got these 4 bolts, which on this one is only 3. There's one missing. So now this cover is ready to come off on this model. I'm not sure what all we're going to see under there. Oh, there we go. A little bit of a nest. It's not crazy. It's not all packed in here. So the cylinder was still able to get some air. But it's definitely bad enough that it needs some attention. They pulled a whole stick in there somehow and had it stuck in the air filter housing. Boy, they're ambitious little guys. I'll come back through later before I put the cover on with an air gun and blow all this out of here real good. Because the air is supposed to go down through here to cool the whole cylinder. So we need to get all that grass out of there. The rest of that should blow out. So now we need to get a Torx bit and take these 3 screws out so we can get to the nut for the flywheel. So on this model, these 3 little screws here are T15. So now we can get to that nut to get the flywheel out of the way. All right, on this one, that's a 15/16 nut there. So it's a little on the big side. Now we're going to be tapping on top of this, so I like to put the nut back on. That way we can take the nut off, and if we have to clean up any threads on the way out. So we're going to leave that right below the top. Okay, so now we're going to pull this flywheel off. And, you know, the approved way of doing this is you take out these 2 screws, you get a puller, you put it on there. And I might have done that one time. I can't remember if I ever did it like that. But there's a little bit of free play in the crankshaft. So we're going to use shock therapy. So we're going to hold it up. We're not wedging it up. We're just holding it up. And we're going to shock the crankshaft inside this flywheel, and it's going to let go. This one's been on for a while. This one's a little bit stubborn. There we go. It only takes out 1 good shot. I just didn't have quite enough pressure holding it up. So now we can take that nut off, the flywheel will come right off. Now ideally, this nut will come off by hand. Just like that. So everything in the flywheel looks okay. It's a little shiny around here. It's got a wear pattern where it's really not supposed to be touching anything. So we got something to look at now. So I don't know if any of you guys noticed anything yet. The camera's a little far away. The dipstick tube's kind of in the way. So now I've had plenty of flywheels off already. And this is actually the first time I've seen this. So those wires are not supposed to be bare. So the charging coil itself probably is okay, but those wires are definitely a problem. Somehow, something put them in a spot where they're not really supposed to be. So somehow something put these wires where they're hitting the flywheel. I really think they should be inside the coil and come right down there. See, if they come over this way, if those wires were inside that mount and come over this way, right down there, right down through this clamp, there's no way that the flywheel is going to rub them over here. This is why there was a shiny spot underneath the flywheel. So as you move this around, it was doing all kind of strange things. So I'm going to see if I have one that's just like this. I have an overhead valve engine over there where this might be the same size. Well, we're going to lay this down here so it don't get lost. So yeah, this could very well be the culprit, because if one of these wires gets shorted out, it could definitely drain the battery while it's sitting. So this could be a factory problem, that it was built this way, but it's definitely been that way for a long time, you know. But yeah, there's really not enough space for it to pass through here. It should really come down through there. So I think I'm going to pull that other head off, pull the other flywheel off the other engine and see what that looks like. And that should be the problem. Well, this part's definitely a problem. Well, it looks like the flywheel was rubbing on here too. It's a little strange. And over here, these look good. But these guys over here, they got hot at one point. They burned all the coloring off and they're starting to separate. These are nice and tight. These guys here are loose because the coating burned off. The coating takes up a little bit more space and makes them tight. So I'm not sure if somebody previously worked on this and got something not quite right, but we're going to work on replacing that. All right, so I got this a lot newer overhead valve Briggs. I'm going to pull the flywheel off, see if the charging coil is the same. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Ah, there we go. Now we're at the flywheel. Now we're going to put this back in. Tighten it down almost all the way. You can even get that out of there. And we're going to tap on that just like we did the other one. So now when we pull this off, I'm going to look and see where that wire's headed. See where that wire's routed at. Yeah, just a couple little love taps. So that wire starts right here. On that engine over there, that plug is over here. So this is in a different position to start with. So that may have been off before for who knows why, which gives you a little bit more wire here. So we're going to take them 4 screws, and we'll get this tab out of the way and change this out. And hopefully it's all the same. All right, let's get these off. So we'll adjust this over out of the way. So this has little shoulders that go down in here. So hopefully that one matches. Another adjustment here. But we're going to put this just the way it was on the other one. So it fit right on there. I don't need to find a new one of these. I have one from a newer overhead valve. It fit right on there. So this is one of those areas where somebody decided at Briggs & Stratton that, well, we're charging the same battery 25 years later as we were before, so we'll use the same charging coil. We'll just cast the new engine so this lines up. That way we don't have to redesign a new one. So that was all in the name of saving money. But it's nice that you can change something from a previous generation engine back and forth. Now we'll tighten these with a ratchet. Well, they're all tight. Yeah, that one went a little bit. All right. Now we'll adjust this little clamp here to hold the wires in. There we go. Make sure they're not pinched in there. So now they're down out of the way. The flywheel can't get to them. So they should be good now. That should not happen again. So I really think that must have been off at some time, and somebody put it back on with the wire coming out here and ran it down that way. It's a little hard to believe that that would have happened at the factory unless it was someone's first day and they weren't paying attention to what they were doing. All right, now we put the flywheel back on. All right. Get the flywheel on there. I think we might be checking the gap on that coil. That looks a little close. There we go. Now we got that all the way down in there. Now we put the top of the flywheel back together. Which means we put this guy on. And this one actually does not have any locator pin. Sometimes they might have a little tab that sticks out. This one does not. So you want to check your torque specs on this. Make sure it's tight enough so that it doesn't shear the key. If that's not tight enough, if it ever backfires and turns the engine the other way, it could easily shear off the key, and then it won't start. Or it'll start and run very erratic. Put these little guys back in here. Now, I said I was going to blow that out, so now it's time to do that. So now you can see that's all nice and clean, so we'll get good airflow and good cooling on that. Make that engine last another 10 or 20 years maybe. As long as we change the oil. The oil's a little dark, so we got to change that. All right, I'm going to put the cover back on to hold the dipstick tube in, because I really think we're about done with this repair on this. There you can see we still got a good battery. So this here's a screenshot that I put up from when I was touching the key. I did not see this when I was working on it, but you can see on the video that the voltage changed when I moved the key a little bit. And we're going to come back to that because I did not even realize that that was a possible problem. And on this one, it is a definite problem, and we're going to find a solution for it. Okay, so the diode is still wired into the right side. It's wired into the same side, but sure seems like it's really not charging. My battery voltage is 1286. So when it's running, it should be higher than that. And it's actually lower. Okay, so it appears that all is not well yet, because I'm getting 19 volts out of there, and I'm getting 19 volts there, but at the battery I'm not really getting any charge. So we have to see what all this has to go through to get back to the battery. Now there are some the wiring harness is laying down here rubbing against the steering arm, so that's not supposed to be like that. Typically these only have one fuse, and that provides power to the ignition switch, so that's most likely not the problem because it cranks over. And right here is the fuse, and the fuse is good. So is it possible that something happened to the ignition switch from those wires being shorted out? Well, anything's possible. We're going to have to get the wiring schematic and see what we can find here. Because everything under here that I can see looks okay. You know, we're getting this voltage on the back side of this plug, which goes right into the harness here to go back to there. So the side that has the battery, the charging voltage, is this. Then there's a jumper over to that, which isn't connected on the other side, but this goes back to the tractor. So we'll have to see what that blue wire is for. That probably the one that's supposed to go back to the battery, or provide the charge to go back to the battery. But then you also got, okay, yeah, there's not another wire coming out of here. It just, so that blue wire needs to get the power back to the battery, and it looks like it's going up to the plug here. So we'll take that off. We can check continuity there. So we'll go from this one right here to this side right here, and they're connected. So that part's doing its job. So it's possible that the switch is bad. So we'll have to get the schematic and see how the power gets back to the battery. Now, luckily I have the manual for this. I got the manual with this tractor, and that is that's the lifesaver that helped me figure this out. Now I'm going to try to put a good picture up here, but down here it shows what voltage you should have coming out of the windings. So on one side, that's just for the headlights, you should have 14 volts AC at 3,600 RPMs. All measurements are 3,600 RPMs. On the side with the diode, because this only has a diode for the charging system, it's non-regulated, there's no electric PTO, no fancy anything. And we'll get into one other thing that this does not have, which if you don't realize that, it'll throw off your troubleshooting. So up here on this side of the diode, you should have 28 volts AC minimum with the charging system disconnected. That's with this disconnected or that, so that the battery is not part of the circuit. You should have 28 volts minimum. And when I did it, I was getting 30. So the windings under the shroud, under the flywheel, that was working. But when I went to the battery, I was not getting anywhere close to what I got here. So if you look after the diode, the charging system actual output, it shows 3 amps DC. It does not have a voltage there. But after the diode, I believe it was around 19 or 20. So we're going to start it up and do a couple of those checks just to see the meter. So I'm going to go in this side of the diode. I'm just going to disconnect it down here. And let's see if this starts. Now here with the charging system disconnected, we're getting 25 or so volts. So we're getting full output from the charging coil this way. Now here I plugged it back in and we can see that it's connected to the battery because we're showing about 13 volts, which when the battery is connected, it's going to draw down that voltage because the battery is going to absorb some of that current. So it's going to bring it down to what you would expect to see when you're checking voltage at the battery. And you know, this is with the good switch. And a little bit here, I'm going to put the old switch in, and we're going to see intermittent numbers. We're going to see the numbers jumping around because of a bad contact. So when we see 13 volts at these wires, that means that there's a connection to the battery and it should be charging. When we see the number jump up over the 19 or so, you know, up into the 20s, then that means that the battery's not connected, so it's going to show full voltage output, like right there. So here we can see that the battery is not connected. Now, like I said, this is with the old switch. So on that side, we're reading what's in the battery. And then we start, you know, moving the wires a little bit, you know, flexing the switch. And we get these erratic readings. And that's what you don't want to see. So that's just reconfirming that there's a problem inside that switch there.
Now here with the bad switch in, we're still getting the high voltage reading coming out of the charging coils. So I'm going to put the good switch in it, and then we're going to see a more consistent reading. It's not going to be jumping around. It's going to be what you would expect to see when you measure the battery. So it's going to show like 13.1, 13.2, and the more we measure it, the higher it's going to get, because since it's charging, it's slowly going to go up. So as you can see there, 13.2, 13.3. And we're going to go back and check the battery, and because of the wiring and stuff, it's going to be just a little bit lower, but it's going to start crawling up, and a little bit later we'll leave it run and check the voltage.
So without the battery connected to the charging system, we're getting about 30 volts out of this with it running. And with it connected, the battery absorbs some of that. This becomes part of the charging. The battery and the charging system all become one. And it was around 13.1, 13.2 volts, which is really what it should be. Now, when I check here on the blue connector, that's this blue wire right here. It goes right into there with this red jumper here. It's blue there. You got a red jumper to go to the orange wire over here. So when the battery's not part of the system, you get 30 volts here. I was getting 30 volts there at one point with the other switch. With this switch here, with everything connected, I'm getting the same voltage here basically as I'm getting on the battery. So what I found was, because of the schematic telling me which wires connect in that switch when you turn the key on. See if we can get zoomed in here real good. So the charging system is B plus A1. I can't see it up on the screen, but I'm going to try and put it up on the screen. So run with the light is B plus A1. So B is this one down here in the group of 4 in that corner, and A1 is one of the ones that's on a slant. So B comes right from the fuse, comes right from the battery cable through the fuse, right to power up the switch. Then A1 just makes a connection down to the charging system. That's how the charging system connects to the battery. It has to go through the switch and then through the fuse. Doesn't go through the solenoid because the wires are connected on one side of the solenoid. There's a little wire on the battery cable side of the solenoid. So what this system doesn't have is that, and it don't have an hour meter. Now, the part that was a little confusing was I realized that the charging system was not connected to the battery because the voltage was so high that something was disconnected. It was not getting to the battery. The battery was not part of the charging system at that point. And I had looked at this, and it's like, okay, well, the power comes through the fuse. It's connected to the battery right here. So if it's connected to the battery right there, how is it still run? Because it needs the battery voltage to run for the fuel solenoid. This is an older style engine. The fuel shut-off solenoid, if so equipped. This is a flathead. And I don't know if flatheads had fuel shutoffs, but this one does not. So that's why I'm able to disconnect the plug with it running, because once it's started, this tractor does not use the battery at all. It charges it up, does not use the battery at all. So it'll run. It don't need the battery to run. And this is putting out all it can put out. Why is it not connected to the battery? And all the connections I was checking here, you know, no resistance there, no resistance there. Now this is the original switch. And even this tested good. When you put this to run, we can check these two terminals. It's this one here, and it's this one here. And right now we're getting 0. Well, because of the scale I have it on, we're getting 0. If I put it way down here, then we get 0.2. My meter only goes down to about 0.3 or so. So, you know, that's basically 0 if there was a calibration button on here. So you think, okay, well, the switch isn't the problem. But when I put it on here, and I showed this with it running, I wiggled this with it running. So essentially back probing the plug here. Now these are making contact in there. They're in there snug, they're making contact. And right now everything looks good. But what was happening was I would wiggle this around a little bit. Just like that, it would go to infinity. There'd be no connection. Now these probes are touching those terminals, those connectors. They're touching in there. But if I wiggle it like this, then it comes back. Somewhere inside this plug is a bad connection. And that's what was keeping the charging coil from being connected to the battery. Except for if I turned it back to turn the lights on, then all of a sudden the battery voltage would start going up. It would go up to like 12.9 and climb 1/10 at a time like it's supposed to. But only if I turned it back to the headlights. Because then it would, like, you know, put more draw on here so it would make a connection. Now I recently saw a video, I believe it was by Individualized Repair, where he talked about having a bad connection could keep it from charging because you're only pushing 3 amps back to the battery, which is not a lot, versus when you turn the key, you know, whatever the draw is on these, I'm thinking it's close to 150 amps. You know, that can go through a connection that's not so good. Although it doesn't go through that connection, that's not part of the cranking system. As long as you got your 12 volts coming in here, one of these other wires energizes the coil. So, you know, the bad connection between these two in the switch has nothing to do with it cranking. So that's what I found out, that this switch is bad. And if you look at the part where the charging system's not connected to the battery, and you see that, you know, this wire here comes right from the battery, and you kind of wonder, well, how come it can still run? Because it does not have the fuel shutoff solenoid. So as you can see, it doesn't need the battery to run. So I want to take this apart, because if I leave it together, I might try to use it. So I'm gonna take this apart. We're gonna see what it looks like in there. So now I did have 2 of these switches that I had in the garage, and these are not necessarily all wired the same. So if you're going to replace one, you need to make sure that it's the right one, because I've run into that already. I went to a customer's house, they put a new ignition switch in and a couple other things, and the switch that the dealer gave them was, I think they just gave them a generic switch, because pretty much that pattern's all the same. And the switch that they had was not wired for what they needed, and their switch wasn't bad. We put that on and fixed a bad sensor. So on this one here, with these 2 terminals, this one does not provide continuity. Well, there it did a little bit. So it's giving a little bit of continuity, but it's not good. That should be 0. And when I tried it earlier, it did nothing. See, like right there. So probably internally this one's bad also. Earlier it had no continuity. So we'll go back to the one that we're going to use. And it's got good continuity. This one had good continuity too, but it was intermittent. So we're going to... So normally I would disassemble something like this, but I'm not worried about saving it. So I'm going to do what some people would do. I'm going to tear it apart. Like I said, I'm not worried about saving it. So we're going to bend these tabs over. Get them way out of the way. And they're plastic, so they're not really going to go back because I over bent them a little bit. So here we can see this part, which every time you turn the key, this here guy is going to rotate. So we got some shiny stuff. We got one here that looks a little burned. This one here looks a little burnt, possibly. That one's a little dark. And then here, that part there doesn't look very good. It looks like it's possibly worn out. So yeah, there are no actual real contacts in there. It's just the way this coil is wired here. It's almost like a printed circuit board. I know it's not really a printed circuit board, but you got some flat copper that you know, connects out here, connects that in there, depending on where you turn the switch. This one here works the right way, and it gets the battery charging. So I finally got to the bottom of the charging problem. It turns out it had more than one problem, and it's quite possible that these wires here, you know, damaged that switch from shorting out and things like that. You know, could have definitely caused a problem. So now we can get on to the rest of this tractor. So I just wanted to show that what I found was not really what I expected to find. Really was not expecting the ignition switch to keep it from charging, because everything I checked with continuity was good, except for when I checked with this plug, wiggling it back and forth, that there was a problem inside the switch that was not letting the current get through to the battery. So we're going to wrap that part up here, and now we're going to keep going with the rest of the tractor. I need to check the belts, and I need to sharpen the blades, I believe. Yeah, I'll sharpen them. They're actually not bad. But I'll probably sharpen them, and I believe change the oil. All this will be on another day. Yeah, we're going to have to change the oil. The oil's pretty dirty, but that's not a big deal. We got this nice quick change oil drain over here, right here. Some people don't like them. You need to make sure that this thread is tight. A lot of times like that's not tight. I should not be able to turn that by hand. I think whatever they have tighten that up is it just doesn't seem to stay. Because, you know, if you run that enough, that can unthread, and there goes all your engine oil, and then there goes your engine. So we're gonna get back to this another day. We'll put this ignition switch back in here. Like that. Plug this in. And we'll start it one more time. Once I find the key. There it is. You guys should have said something. This battery's already fully charged, but it still should go up after it's started up.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this video up right here while this engine runs and we watch the charging voltage go up. But this is a perfect example of why you need to verify the charging voltage, even if you didn't really work on it, just to make sure that it is working, because if something like that ignition switch can cause a problem you may not even realize, where, you know, it's not charging and you don't even know it. So you want to not overlook this, but I was surprised to have two actual different problems causing it not to charge. So like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.